So I'm going to cut 4. So I'm going to do the dopping process, and I'm going to do this setting it up and prepping it, and the entire dopping process. I'm going to do it about 4 times in the next 5 minutes or so. And so that's what, for you guys to get the idea that this is a really not a process that should take forever. I do this because once you cut this flat surface, that's where the dop's going to go. That's the alignment. You can't do this. You can shift to the side if you have an inclusion or a crack over on the side. You can fudge it over to the side. I don't recommend doing that because the brain is not that good at estimating exactly how far to off-center it. I recommend preforming. If there's a crack or an inclusion or something on the edge and you want to take that off, preform it, hand shape it to take that off or take most of it off at least. Because if you have something that's lopsided and you go, oh, I want to cut this part off over here, so I'm going to dop over on this side. In my experience with my brain, I haven't been really good at picking that exact spot. And I practiced and I tried and I worked at it. I found it's better to get out the saw or just take the lap and just grind it off and get it shaped pretty close to what I want, and then bullseye what I actually want. Because your brain will get confused by how much is over there and how much to off-center it. It's very difficult to get your brain to do that geometry. So kind of, if there's a crack or something, just shave it off, get kind of the rough shape that you want, and then bullseye to that rough shape. And the first thing I'm going to do is I got to figure out where, how am I going to orient it? Well, I know what design I'm going to cut. So I'm holding this thing kind of in my fingernails, and you'll notice I'm using a wrist action here because I don't want to cut a flat, I want to round it off. And we're not going to be cutting round brilliants, by the way. Round brilliant is not the first design to learn on. This is a 600, and I recommend using not anything more coarse than this for these little tiny guys. So all I'm doing here is kind of preforming it a little bit. And round is not really the shape we're going to do. We're going to do a hexagon. But I'm going to make it kind of roughly a round shape. Get a good grip on the stone. I'm grabbing it kind of between my fingernails. Right? And you'll wind up grinding your fingernails off when you do this. And I'm putting my face down close to the lap so that when I put the stone on the lap, I can really see the stone lap interface. I can see what's happening, and I can also feel it. So I'm not going to have like 4 different angles here. I'm going to have one really flat surface is what I'm looking for. This is a common error in setting up the temporary table, is multiple touches on the lap and trying to handhold. There'll be a surface like this, and then there'll be another surface like this. So there's really a ridge here in between. Then you're trying to make your dop stick to that. And superglue and wax both, they don't like to stick to a real uneven surface. That's one of the reasons we cut the temp table. Right? We just stick it on there. We need a nice flat surface. So you want to reflect that surface, reflect the light to your eye, and make sure that it's one flat plane and not multiple odd angles. Right? Otherwise you're going to have the stones coming off the dop. Right? So that's one of the problems that newer faceters have, is losing stones off the dop. And one of the reasons they lose stones off the dop is because they don't have a really flat surface. They're trying to glue to something that's too irregular. You guys just pass them around, have a look at them, and see that surface is very flat. So that stone is prepped. It's ready to glue on the dop. So how long did that take? I mean, less than a minute. I'm showing it to you guys. I'm talking, fooling around. The largest stop that's going to fit, that you are not going to cut into when you get to your girdle. Okay? So you need to be looking at the size of your stone, looking at your plan, that sort of thing, because cutting into your dops will ruin them. We're going to do the glue process. So I'll have this demoed all the way through. Really, really important to clean the dop. Really, really important. A clean dop is a happy dop. A dirty dop will throw the stone at you. So I'm using a little alcohol on a tissue. Make sure your tissue is unscented. Scented tissue, or the really nice stuff for your face, it's got all the lotions and stuff in it, and that's the opposite of what you want. Right? You can hear the squeak.
Squeaky clean.
Squeaky clean. It means I'm pinching it really hard, actually doing a sort of an abrasive thing to the surface there. I'm examining the flat surface to make sure it looks flat, make sure it looks clean. Now all you guys fingered up all of my stones, so they're all covered with skin oil. Your stones are going to have skin oil on them because you're going to have handled them. You want to take the stone and wipe it aggressively with alcohol. And put it down in such a way that you can pick it back up without accidentally touching that surface. Once you clean these surfaces, you do not want your fingers touching it again. You put a little skin oil on there, it's going to make the bond break. So I put the surface that I'm cleaning down on my paper here. And I'm doing a final inspection on this flat surface too to make sure this is as flat as I want it to be. It's reflecting light, it's a single surface, it looks clean, didn't pick up any weird dirt or anything. And again, it's kind of nice to do just several at a time. So another one of the mistakes that's really common with superglue is people get it all over the place. They use way too much. You take the lid off your superglue and the weather changes, barometric pressure changes, and the next thing you know, you got all over the place. I had a gal in the first class that I did. I did this demo, and then I was kind of taking care of some stuff, and I heard kind of troubled tones. And I looked around, and she had all of her fingers and the dop glued together, and the whole surface of everything I could see from across the room was all white with the superglue. So she had it like everywhere. You don't want that, right? That's not good. So the amount of superglue is so small. You just want to barely just put some on, and that's plenty. There's a little bead, there's a little bead right in the end, and it's just a tiny little bead. There's a photograph of the appropriate amount, by the way, in your manual. It's just enough. So I do this. If you remember when I talked about using the loop, I talked about anchoring the heels of your hands together and that allowing you to be very accurate with the way that you move things. So I use that same type of technique here. Okay? Now, how do I get this damn thing on here and not have it drop in the wrong place? This is going to be difficult to see on the small one. I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to show you what I did. So what did I do in order to be able to adjust the dop to the stone? This is the stone. This is the dop. So this has superglue on it. So as soon as I do this, capillary action is going to bring it. Now I'm going to have superglue on both surfaces. So instead of taking the dop and the stone and putting them together flat, like that, that's going to tend to make that superglue. As soon as you mash it super thin, it's going to make it want to bond. So then if I did it that way, as soon as I put the dop against the stone, I wouldn't be able to move it. What I'm doing is I'm tipping the dop. So I bring the two together like this. So the actual contact is only just at the bottom of the dop, just at the bottom edge. And then I can slide it around. I can slide it this way. And I look in this direction. And I tip it and look downward to get this alignment. I lift it up to get this alignment. I turn it and look down the dop to get rotational alignment. I sight across the flat on the keyed dop to whatever landmark, flat surface, or area on here. You guys will see me do this with this emerald in a second. I'll be tipping the emerald back and forth this way. What my eye will be doing is I'll be looking across the flat of the keyed dop, and I'll be aligning in parallel the flat of the dop and the edge of the emerald. Does that make sense? So I'll be doing this look, and this look. 3 directions of look. Look down, look across, sight down the dop. As I'm doing that, I'll be tipping the dop slowly upward. Slowly upward. I'll be moving it, adjusting it, twisting it, and I'll be tipping it slowly upward. And pretty soon, when things begin to become more and more aligned, the dop will begin to come in contact with the stone. And pretty soon it'll grab. So that's the technique that I use to get accurate alignment by eye with superglue. Because if you just do this, unless you're bullseye on all 3 axes, unless you're bullseye, you're going to be stuck. You're going to have to break it apart, and then do it again, and do it. You know, you get trial and error. It's going to be, you'll be in frustration. So, tip the dop to the stone, move it aligned this way, move it in this direction. Looking down, move it in this direction. Looking down the dop, do the rotation, if you're going to do rotational alignment. And all the time, tipping, 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 tipping. Everyone?
How much time do you have to work with that superglue before it's
Plenty, plenty. If you're tipping it this way. Once the dop becomes flat to the stone, you have seconds to move it. I mean, really, it's going to tend
So
to...
that bead you put on there, you have a little time to...
Well, as long as you have this relationship. As soon as you get this relationship, it's going to grab. It's going to grab really quick. Within a few seconds, it'll grab. So as long as you have this, there's not enough surface here to really glue. You can just move this all over the place for a long time. And you'll see me when I do this other one, you'll see that there's really plenty of time. So I'm going to do, I'll just do that other garnet.
So John, for small rock, you recommend superglue then?
For anything under about 6 millimeters, 7 millimeters, almost everything. Because you have too small a surface area, and I've got glue on here now, and we're going to sit here and talk. Okay? Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to set up. You have too small a surface area for wax to be very strong, and this is my take on it. Once the surface area gets the table size of a 6 millimeter, smaller than that, wax becomes iffy to maintain the hold. Another thing that influences me towards using superglue is anything with an adamantine luster, a greasy luster, sapphire in particular. For some reason, doesn't stick to wax as well as other stones do. So sapphire, I'll go up to 7 or 8 millimeter and still use superglue. And that's part of what makes me choose, you know, one thing over the other thing. So here we are with the other garnet. I've picked it up so I've got my flat surface. I'll adjust this so that it's comfortable. Notice I've got the flat on the dop on the top. So if I wanted to do rotational alignment, all I have to do is rotate my hands. I can keep everything anchored together as I turn it and look down the dop with my eye. Then I can rotate it back and do this. I can drop my hands and look down from the top. So when I do that process, now that I've told you exactly what I'm doing, you'll see each piece of it. I'm going to bring them together. Tip that garnet a little bit. Bring them together, and I'm kind of eyeballing. There's my spot. I'm still at an angle. I'm going to look from the top, look from the side. I don't have this axis to worry about, so I'm not going to worry about it. My vertical alignment, horizontal alignment. And see, I got plenty of time here. I'm in contact. The dop and the stone are touching. And I'm continuing to move it, and I got all this time to look back and forth. Now I'm rolling it into place because I'm confident with it. And I moved my finger because I got a little glue on it, so I drug it away so it wouldn't stick. I tend to finish like this. because I can rotate like this and I kind of double check. Is this good enough? Is this the way I want it? And do, you've all got small dops. Do at least 2 or 3, because it's almost certain that you're going to knock 1 or more of these off the dop. And you don't want to have to be sitting around waiting for your glue to get good and hard again. Now this is a hexagonal stone, so this one, this crystal, the way I cut across it, it's a little bit hexagonal. So I want to line up my flat. A couple of the other ones I didn't really care about. This one I do, because it's going to increase my yield a little bit. And since this is impossible to replace rough, I kind of want to do a good job. Your proficiency with this is really going to strongly influence your yield. So you want to get good at this.